Imagine ordering a pizza, paying full price, and then being told you can't choose the toppings, can't taste test the cheese, and oh, by the way, you also have to pay extra delivery charges to a guy sitting across the ocean? Sounds unfair, right? Well, that's exactly how the American colonists felt under British rule in the 1700s. And that unfairness, it exploded into the American Revolution. Let's dive in. The background is this. Britain had just finished fighting expensive wars, especially the 7 Years' War with France. Wars are costly, and Britain wanted someone to help foot the bill. Who better than the colonies? After all, they were growing, trading, and making money, so the British Parliament started passing taxes, the Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Duties, and later, the Tea Act. The colonists weren't thrilled. Their slogan became famous: no taxation without representation. In other words, if we're paying, we should have a say. Imagine being billed for Netflix but never getting the password. That's how powerless they felt. As taxes piled up, tempers rose. In 1770, things turned deadly. British soldiers fired into a crowd of protesting colonists in Boston, killing 5 people. This event, remembered as the Boston Massacre, became fuel for the fire. But the colonists weren't just angry. They were creative. In 1773, disguised as Native Americans, they stormed ships in Boston Harbor and tossed 342 chests of tea into the water. That late-night caffeine spill is remembered as the Boston Tea Party, and it sent a clear message: we're not paying for your tea, King George. Britain responded with what the colonists called the Intolerable Acts, basically punishing Boston by shutting down its harbor and tightening control. But instead of scaring the colonies, this united them. In 1774, delegates from 12 colonies met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress. For the first time, they began to think not as separate colonies, but as Americans. By 1775, words turned into gunfire. At Lexington and Concord, near Boston, the first shots were fired. The shot heard round the world. Farmers and shopkeepers with muskets took on trained British soldiers. And surprisingly, they held their own. This was no longer just a tax protest, it was war. A year later, in July 1776, the Second Continental Congress declared independence. Thomas Jefferson drafted the famous Declaration, which boldly stated that all men are created equal, and that governments get power from the people, not kings. Signing it was dangerous. It was basically saying to the world, we're breaking up with Britain, and if they don't like it, too bad. The war itself lasted from 1775 to 1783. It wasn't easy for the colonies. They lacked money, weapons, and a formal army. But they had determination, leaders like George Washington, and eventually, French support. Yes, France joined in, mostly to annoy Britain. With French supplies and soldiers, the tide turned. The decisive blow came at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, where British General Cornwallis surrendered. Finally, in 1783, the Treaty of Paris officially recognized the United States of America as an independent nation. The American Revolution wasn't just about breaking away from Britain. It was about ideas that ordinary people could govern themselves, that freedom mattered, and that power shouldn't rest in the hands of one king across the ocean. Of course, the reality was complicated. Slavery continued. Women had little political power, and Native Americans were left out entirely. But the ideals born during that revolution inspired countless others around the world, from France to Latin America. So what's the takeaway? The American Revolution wasn't just a war. It was a statement. It showed that when people feel unheard and unfairly treated, they eventually stand up. Sometimes with petitions, sometimes with protests, and sometimes, yes, with revolutions. Or put simply, if you charge people for the pizza, at least let